Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Guitareo live lesson. The gentleman sitting next to me is Mr. Alex Flock. Thanks for coming out today.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. I heard so many good things about Alex's playing from so many different people that I know and respect. It's like, I have to get him out here to do some stuff. So today what we're going to be talking about is applying the blues to pop. And that jam track that you just heard is available for you. I just listened to the tune Passion Fruit by Drake.
Yes.
Made a little loop that sounds like it, and it's something that's really fun to apply, like just a basic blues skill over in a pop context. Which
exactly, yeah.
And it's funny because there's a course we have that a lot of people are going through called Guitar Technique Made Easy, and the question of the week this week was, what style of music are you going to pursue once you finish this course, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the people said blues, and I was like, that's great because it applies to so many different types of music.
Absolutely.
And pop being one of those types of music, Alex is going to take today and just show you some things, some ideas for applying, you know, the blues, which we all know and love and need, to pop music, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And Alex plays in a lot of, backing up a lot of local people.
You bet.
A lot of solo gigs, stuff like that. So he has a lot of experience, and what he has to say today is going to be really valuable for you.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, man.
You bet, man. You bet.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that most of the viewers will probably be familiar that, like, blues music is basically based off of the pentatonic scale, right?
Yep.
And, you know, it's our minor pentatonic scale. So we're kind of thinking like a G minor kind of key center there.
Sure.
So I'm thinking kind of my G minor pentatonic.
And are you down tuned a half step or something?
Nope. I'm.
You stay with the tune?
Yep. I'm standard tuning. So
Sure.
yeah, right there. But then there's also, you know, there's a couple things that make blues kind of. I mean, if you. Aside from, you know, the classic kind of cliches doing the like kind of blues like thing, there's something that makes something sound bluesy, right? It's an inflection, it's like the way that you hit a couple different notes. One of it is sort of that inclusion of like the flat five.
Okay.
So when we're going pentatonic to the blues scale, we're just adding one note. And that's, you know, we have our pentatonic, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, back to the 1.
Okay.
We add in 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5. That's kind of what they call the blue note, right?
Sure.
And I find that, you know, there are ways of hitting it in a pop music setting that is sort of like a nod to it. It's like a subtle way of doing it where without being like that kind of, because it can almost sound really like 80s metal or something like.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm learning it. I'm playing that because I learned this shape.
Exactly, yeah. But there are ways of sort of sliding, you know.
That, to me, that's a lot more kind of intentional.
Yes, yeah. So like when I was kind of jamming on that track and, you know, going, I was hitting a lot of sort of this subtle thing where I'm sliding in and out, kind of like, it's almost like a vocal thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a singer doesn't just sing right on the pitch. They're bending notes and they're sliding in and, you know, up to a different note or down to a different note. And so I'm kind of using that to be like a, you know, like a really vocal thing.
That's something that I don't think I do enough myself.
It's great, man. You hear like
sliding into
like Derek Trucks, you know, like, I mean, he's plays slide, but even when he plays without a slide, he's got this like intensely vocal thing. John Mayer's another guy who really, you know, his like left hand is really, really well developed, and that's kind of like one of the things that I think is really important about the blues. You know, a lot of the blues guitarists, they're not really shredders per se. Some of them could be, but you know, you don't have to be a shredder to play the blues. But so that's sort of like one aspect that I'm sort of thinking about is like.
I think that right there, like, is you're going to talk about more, but that today is enough for a lot of you guys who want to get into blues to, number one, start experimenting with. Number two, take that minor pentatonic scale shape and memorize where the flat 5 notes are. So
absolutely,
you can and out of it, like you just did. Right?
Yeah, really important. So because you want to basically be able to hit that in any octave anywhere over the neck, right? It basically, if you want to open up the fretboard, that you have that vocabulary available to you wherever you are. So if I'm down here, it's cool, I got it right there. If I'm right here, if I want to go up the octave.
Could you do that a little bit, like same like you just did, just a lot slower and intentional with the slide? Because I know some people are going to be like, huh?
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. Yeah. Let's slow that right down. So I'm starting on the root.
Okay.
Flat 3.
Yeah.
And then when I get to the 4.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this all. This is like so I'm picking once. I slide up to the, it's like a grace note, slide up to the flat 5, down, pull off, and down. So when I do it fast, that's probably too fast again, but
No, that's
you
good.
know, so I'm picking the first 2, actually the first 3. And then this is all like a slurred thing, as if I was a singer sort of like slurring, coming back down. Pull off. So there's actually 2 slides. Slide up, slide down, pull off, pick the note. And when you get that going nice and fast, you get that. That was a little sloppy. There we go, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next little bluesism
Yeah.
for pop music,
Yeah.
let me just encourage you guys to get your questions in right now. There's one question in the inbox right now, and I know it always takes a while for the stream to catch up, or the questions to catch up to the stream, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
So get your questions in now. If you have any questions on blues, anything like that, or flat 5 notes, anything we're talking about here, or just anything off the wall that you want to ask Alex as well.
Yeah, you bet.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. We kind of covered like, one aspect of what makes blues guitar or blues playing sound like blues is having that flat 5 in there, right? The blue note. But the other thing too is it pertains to the flat 3 and the flat 7.
Okay.
And the fact that a lot of blues guitarists push those notes slightly sharp. And you don't want to actually bend it. It's like it's a quarter step bend. So you're actually thinking in between 2 pitches. And it's something that just makes it come alive. It gives it character. And you hear it with singers all the time, right?
Yep.
Like singers they'll intentionally play with the pitch a little bit. They'll push it. It creates this certain energy, that doesn't exist. If I just go like this, like, it sounds really flat and really boring, but I get this energy and this movement if what I do when I go up to the flat 3rd, so from the root, right? And it's just this like slight thing. So when I'm going like,
Yeah.
it's like all of a sudden that note comes alive. And that's what you want. You want when you're playing this type of music, you want to feel that it should be really vocal, it should be really alive, it should be really expressive. Yeah.
So do me a favor, do that same lick, but bend all the way up to like properly on the flat, the
3rd.
To the 3rd.
Okay, yeah, you bet. So if I was to blend, right?
Right.
It's
square, man.
It's super square, yeah, exactly. It sounds like almost like, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the attitude, the character that quarter step bend has. So it's intentionally just pushing it up a little bit, but not so much that you're actually getting to the next note.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always use, even when I'm doing, a quarter step bend like that, I always have a couple support fingers, just so that I feel really solid, especially too if I want to like add a little bit of vibrato in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To have a couple fingers to support it is really important.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot easier than trying to go,
Yeah. You're asking for it there.
Yeah, exactly. Our hands aren't really like engineered to push up like this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So because it's such an unnatural motion, really helpful to actually not only have a couple fingers, but you're going to want to lock a little bit. I'm not sure if this is getting too much into
No, it's
technique
great.
with it,
People want to know.
but you want to actually lock a little bit from your wrist. So as I push up, I'm actually, if you watch, I'm not sure where the best, if I'm going to try and get the camera so that's kind of on my wrist there. I don't know if I have any guidance.
T will get the best.
Is that good? That's good.
Yeah.
He's got it. Okay, cool. So you watch this, I kind of actually lock out from here. I keep the fingers pretty locked, so I have a lot of support. And as I push up, you can see there's actually a lot of rotation coming from the wrist. And that's one of those things that I wish that somebody had showed me.
Yeah?
when I had first,
show us what you were trying to do when you were first learning.
when I was first learning, I was keeping my wrist just like this. And like I'll do an example of like a full bend. And I was trying to push like that. And then when I was trying to do vibrato, I was trying to do it all from the fingers without locking out my wrists.
Yeah.
And I was having such a tough time, I couldn't figure out. It wasn't actually until like the advent of like YouTube videos and I managed to track down somebody kind of demonstrating this. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So that if I had a tip when you're hitting any type of bend, it would be really lock that wrist out and use that, because you want it to be as easy as possible. We don't want to make these things too hard. We don't want to be, expending all our energy trying to just use finger strength.
For sure. Can you just go through and kind of go all across the fretboard doing that bend on the flat 3rd up?
Yeah, you bet, yeah. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll be thinking actually, so I'm coming from this shape right here where I actually have the 5. So I'm barred right here with the first finger, and I have the 5 right there on the B string, and then I have the root right there on the E string at the 4th fret, and you get this classic sort of. So that would be a good sort of little lick that, you can take that little chunk of vocabulary, and then what you do is I can play it right here. You'd be like, maybe I want to play it down the octave. So I can find it right here. So I'm looking for the 5 and the 1, which in this case we have D sharp and G sharp. I have a D sharp and a G sharp right here. So it's kind of the same shape. First finger right there, barred. Same thing, nice little bend to give it a little bit of character. A little vibrato to end, We can find it right here. And oftentimes when I'm playing with the wound strings, actually, I'm not bending up because I got so much more room on the neck. I'm actually pulling down, which is actually a lot easier because our fingers or hands are, they're made to grip things.
To grab things, yeah.
Exactly, right? That's why it's so hard to like push up like this and push the strings at first, But with this, you just give it a tug down. Same thing, wrist is still sort of locked out. But now, I'm starting it by pulling down instead of pushing upwards. Yeah. And when you're doing your vibrato on your bend, you always want to actually, so I take it, that's a little far, but the vibrato actually starts by then taking it even sharper.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise you kind of like, you lose the effect of having the note bent up, right? If I take the, the note bent up, and I try to then start my vibrato by letting the note down, you lose some of that like energy and intensity that you've
built. Makes sense.
So when I'm always doing my vibrato, I'm actually starting the vibrato by pushing it up even a little bit sharper. Yeah. And then letting it back down to where I was.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. But anyway, so we were right there. We also can find it right here. So D sharp, G sharp right here, 11th fret on the D and G strings. Sorry, 13th, because we'd actually be, that would have been, a tone too far down. And then finally, up here, just 12 frets up from where we were on the B and the E string.
That's a good exercise for memorizing the fretboard too. Just
it's a great one,
like that around.
Yeah, I really recommend. I find that transcribing solos is great, but sometimes when you say if you transcribe a specific solo, you can get kind of stuck being like, well, I have all this information and I don't know how to pare it down to actually use it. Unless I find a song that I can use every single one of these licks in, it fits in perfectly, right?
Right.
It can be a problem. But if you take just a little section or a little, 4 or 5 note phrase. So we're thinking little phrases, something, akin to a sentence, in a conversation.
Instead of memorizing a whole page. In
Exactly, yeah. So just memorize one sentence and then be like, okay, well, what can I do with that? Where I want to be able to play it all over. Because then not only have you you've worked on fretboard memorization and being able to play the same thing all over the place, but you've really incorporated it to it becomes part of your playing because it's
something that's usable.
It's something that's usable, exactly, yeah, and that's what you want. And that's what I found so much when I was trying to transcribe I tried to transcribe full Stevie Ray Vaughan solos or whatever, right?
That's a chore, man.
It's a huge chore. I know that it's it's a lot of work, and then it's oh, I can't figure out how to use this whole
in context, yeah.
In context. But if I just took something in Texas Flood, he does, the Albert King thing, so if I'm in the right key, I'd be like,
yeah.
Right? I just take that and I work it all over the neck, and then I have it, and then it's I can work it into solo as just a small little phrase, and then I'm free to then incorporate something else that I want to put. I'm not stuck with okay, I have to do everything
because
this follows. Exactly, yeah. What came before, what came after,
Yeah.
So then I have, the option, or whatever, whatever I want to put. That's all just kind of off the top of my head, where could I go from this, instead of being well, I learned it this way, so this is the way that I view it. it can be one of those things that when you learn it in context, it's really hard to shake that context and feel comfortable making it work out of that. But if you practice it, if you break all these things and parse them down into just little ideas, you can then really incorporate them into your playing a little bit more.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great, man. That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. I mean, it's great to learn songs. That really motivates me, but taking them and making them usable to where you can make up your own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. You want to move on to, what did he say, the flatted seventh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Flatted seventh. So it's kind of the same idea, right? We have the... It really leads, you know, you get this kind of sense of moving upwards, where the energy kind of comes down with the flat seventh. You get, and you can kind of do the same thing. We can be barred right there with the 5 and the 1. You can even just, you know, there's a lot of kind of character, and even just, you know, going up the scale. Right?
Yeah.
And just getting that little sharp. You can even go combine both of them, right? Yeah, exactly. With a little bend in there.
You're right. There's so many. Like, I've had a couple of vocalists just popping in my mind right now as you're doing. Like, they do that all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, great sort of like soul guys like Stevie Wonder, or, you know, you'll hear him. He does a lot of really like bluesy inflections with his vocals. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
Cool, man. So. What I want to do now is to put this track on a little bit more.
Yep, you bet.
And then just like see how you could apply, because this track doesn't sound bluesy.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, and when you hear the original song, there's not really anything that's bluesy about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So just and maybe just talk through as it's playing.
You bet. Yeah.
You know, keep it really simple, and then just go a little more crazy.
Okay. Yeah. We'll start out with some like kind of really basic ideas and kind of show how they work over the song, and then kind of.
And you guys can download this jam track and give us a try for yourself. So.
All right. Cool.
Let me turn this up. Hold on a second. Okay, here he comes.
There we go. So there, getting the bends exactly both. Here we go again, 5/7. Yeah. You know, I might want to stay now going up a little bit. So instead of being on the flat 7 now, thinking. You know, adding a little bit of intensity.
That's very John Mayer.
Yeah. So that's kind of working those ideas right there. Absolutely, that's very John Mayer. John Mayer is like a really huge influence of mine.
Okay.
And he's somebody who all over his, like you listen to Gravity, which is a pop song, right?
Yep.
It's just like a big blues guitar solo at the end, right?
For sure.
You know, and he's hugely influenced by guys like Stevie and, you know, B.B. King and all those great guitar players.
Yep.
So he's really found a way to sort of, you know,
to mesh them.
To mesh really the two, well. Yeah.
But like that, the blues is so important, man. We are talking about that earlier today. I was answering comments in GTME. It's like, it's good that you want to learn the blues because it's going to bleed into everything.
It is, absolutely.
And this is like prime example. I don't know. I know there are people in the chat right now that are going through that course and like people's who I commented on there. Stuff to do. So it's a perfect example.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to sort of like mention is, you know, with blues music, I mean with all music, but it's like you come up with these little motifs, right? And these repeating patterns. And it's a way of sort of building things, and don't be afraid of repetition. You probably noticed when I was, you know, starting that. Right? Little variations and stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
But really kind of thinking like the bass is like boom, bum, bum, boom, bam, dum, right? You're thinking of like, what could I sing? If I was singing along to this, what would it sound like? Boom, bum, dum, 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 right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, as you're kind of getting the intensity going, I think of sort of like opening up the register a little bit, right? So it's like, right? Hopping that octave. You hear singers do that all the time. And it creates this, like, all of a sudden, like, there's this movement, right?
Yeah.
And you've gone somewhere. You can bring it, so then when you come back to it now, you can be thinking, well, I've opened up this a little bit, so now I can be thinking of going, right? And I'm starting to open up now, up there where I was just staying down in this register before. And eventually, right, you've opened it up even more, right? And, you know, but I haven't really actually done anything that much different, you know?
You're, that's it's always good to like make a good use of what you know. So if you only know 2 blues scale shapes, that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. 100%. And you know, that was just using 2 blues scale shapes right there.
Exactly.
Would it be helpful for me to sort of run through?
Let's kind of break that down, because you started with what I call like the 5/1 shape.
Yeah.
And then you moved up to like the
classic,
standard,
the standard sort of like box. So this is the one with, you know, our root is on the 5th string, right? Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about your root right there. So we got right here at 11th fret, we got the root. 14th, we got flat 3. Next string 11, 4. Flat 5, 12. 5. Flat 7. Root again. Flat 3. 4. You can either catch the flat 5 right here or right there. I tend to like to, because I find you slide in a little bit nicer. Right there.
Yep.
And then maybe up to the flat 7 right there. So all together again would look like this. And then what I was doing is I was hopping shapes, and this is the same as, you know, most of us probably would have learned it a little bit further down the neck, because usually we're not playing all the way up when we're, you know, first getting going with these shapes. But, you know, it's just like this. So this shape is 4, 7, next string, 4, 5, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 7, 4, 7, 4, 7, and all together. But you can hear how plain that sounds, right? When I'm just kind of playing it through.
It sounds like a scale shape, right?
It just sounds like a scale. So that's the thing. I used to think when I was like starting out playing, I was like, well, what scales do I need to know that sound? Like there must be something more. Like those guys know a different scale or something. No, they don't.
Yeah.
They're using all the same scales that I knew. Yeah. They just knew how to get that inflection, right? They knew how to work that right hand. They knew how to, you know, create those little, right? And all of a sudden the scale comes alive. Even if you just play the scale, right?
Yeah.
I didn't do that much different. All I did was add a little slide, you know?
Yeah.
Flat 5 to the 5, and a little bend.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it sounds, you know, more like music than an exercise.
And like the more intentional you are about that, the more you'll train yourself to, your hand memorizes, I know the 3rd is right there.
Exactly,
so if I want to hear it,
I
can sing it in my head and then be like, boom, there it is.
Yeah, and it takes a little while. You know, these things, especially the left hand, for some reason, and I've heard multiple people say this, it takes a while. So I would, you know, encourage people not to get discouraged, because, you know, bending is tough, and to get it to sound like how you actually imagine it to sound like, it takes a while, you know, and it's not something that happens overnight. So, you know, to anybody who's giving it a go, I would say, you know, you stick with it and don't get discouraged. Just because you don't have it right away doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just like the bending thing is just like bar chords. If you think back to how hard it was when you learned bar chords,
absolutely,
just keep that in mind.
Really hard.
So there are some questions in here.
Okay.
Is there anything, other points you want to hit on?
I mean, I think that was like, you know, the main thing. The only other thing that I might add, and I only did a little bit of it, is, but you can add sort of, we can get this BB box thing going.
Okay.
Where BB King would do this thing where he would add actually, and we're going to kind of, might be a little bit confusing, but he's thinking of, I assume that a lot of the viewers will be familiar that the G sharp minor pentatonic scale is the same as the B major pentatonic scale. Maybe some of them will.
Okay. But this is good for the intermediate guys that are watching.
Yeah. I'll try to make it as basic as possible for most people to be able to follow along. Well, basically, if I start on this note right here, the flat 3, and now think of it as the root, I now have a major pentatonic scale, so a 5-note major scale, which is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, right? So you can kind of think about it as now I'm thinking of myself in B major, so sliding up to the root, and BB would do these things where he would bend up 2 to 3, and he would add in the 4.
Yeah, that's
Right?
That's very reminiscent of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of guys, you hear John Mayer, he does, like, basically anybody who knows, about blues guitar playing has gotten serious about it, has probably incorporated some of that stuff in there. So it creates a little bit of a different sound just because of the chords that we have going on for Passion Fruit. But you get this sound. So I won't get too technical. I'll just say that we're using the B.B. King shape. And if I bend up now, it sounds like that over the first chord. Right? And you have now a different sound that's a little bit different than,
Go right back into that.
then it's a little bit, it gives the ears something different to kind of hear. So
That's nice. A nice change.
Yeah, for those guys who are wondering, it's just basically bending up right here from the 14th fret. We're bending up a whole step now, so we're not thinking of any in between. I'm going to want to hit that note right on. And then I'm going up right here to 12, 14, letting that bend back down and back to 12th fret.
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of the classic lick.
Cool.
Yeah.
So intermediate guys, that's your chunk to take away today and add to your vocabulary.
You bet, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Let's go ahead and get started into these questions.
All right.
And just so you know, my ears just cut off. Hold on a second. There you go. Alex is a great fingerstyle player too, and I want to get him out to do some fingerstyle stuff for you guys. So be looking forward to that in the future. This first question is from Christetta.
Yep.
And she says, actually, it's just one question. So.
Yep.
Hello, Nate and Alex. Not sure how to word this properly, but when soloing and using a simple or complex lick, I always want to add or insert a quick chord groove that can go with the lick and then back to soloing maybe. Is that okay to do? Not sure the rules for blues soloing.
Absolutely. Absolutely that's okay to do. Okay. I mean, you hear that all the time, and so I'm going to sort of break out of the passion fruit sort of thing that we're talking about. I'm just going to talk generally, in blues guitar playing. So say I was, like in a minor blues, like... Right?
Yep.
Like I'm kind of creating my own sort of backing track there, right? Like being my own sort of rhythm player.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, there was a question today, I can't remember, I guess it was just in my regular email inbox, it's like, how do you play chords and solos at the same time? And that is like the perfect example.
Yeah. And you hear that, Stevie was great for that. Like you listen to, even when he added, say, like Reese Winans, like playing keys, right? So he had like somebody doing the key stuff, but he still would be like, playing like Texas Flood, like... Right? And still kind of hitting those chords and stuff in between it, and adding sort of that.
I like the biggest help to me on that, it's given what you're playing context without having to, I'm hearing whatever it is, a C9 chord in my head while I'm playing over this G blues, right? Yeah. Coming back to that gives you more context and helps you start making better note choices.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know. Should I give a little bit more of sort of a breakdown as to what I was doing?
Yeah.
So yeah,
for sure.
Basically what I had doing there, and I'm doing, and a lot of blues guys do it, is this thumb over grip. So maybe some of the viewers, again, if they're a little bit more intermediate, maybe they're familiar with some of the Hendrix stuff. Hendrix did a lot of, opening shapes up by basically having my thumb over the top of the neck so that I can have other fingers free, right, to play like melodies. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up a little groove right here. So I have this G sharp minor chord, and I'm going, and then I'm going to bar, and then back down. So that can be kind of the basis of the chord thing I'm doing. Maybe getting a little fancy
and
there, but
the slide you did up there,
Yeah.
that time was like, that's perfect application
that
for what
was
you were
I,
just talking about.
I actually did, yeah, the
Perfect.
same thing that
Yeah.
I was talking about. Yeah, I did it like kind of really fast.
That's fine.
But,
that
yeah.
gives you something to shoot for, guys.
Exactly, yeah. But again, start nice and simple. It doesn't have to be as fancy. I was starting out way simpler. So even just like, so we're gonna hit our thumb on the E string, hit the chord, and I'm bringing the thumb up to hit the chord, bar, back to chord. So set that up like 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm trying to think of what I'm 1, 2, and 3, 4. Yeah, I think it's just yeah. So 1, and then the next bar, fill it with a lick. It could even just be what we talked about right here.
Yeah. That's great.
Now going right.
Yeah.
Even just alternating.
That's great.
Then you got something that's really simple, but it's really effective. Yeah. It's
love
not
that, man.
always about doing the most complex stuff. It's great to have that stuff in your toolkit too, but you can come up with a lot of great music like I showed just there. There's just a couple notes, right?
Well, like even when you're just playing a lick, I can still hear what's going on because my mind is already on that track, right? And that's what most people that are listening to it, I think they really engage them instead of just playing a solo by yourself or something. Right?
Yeah, it really is. Nate was talking about, when you hear it in your head, that can help you to be able to hear it in your head, to start out with that chord like that. All of a sudden now you hear that harmonic background, and because you just played it, it's like now you hear a little bit more of what you might want to hear over that. Instead of just being like, well, I'm going to solo in, G sharp minor, so I'm going to go, You're like, well, I don't really know what to do because I don't have any concept of what harmonically is happening or what the groove is happening. Now you've kind of created both that.
That is perfect. If you can work on that,
Yeah.
understand it, get it down, you're only limited by how much time do I want to spend in the minor string and how far do I want to take this. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. There really is I don't think anybody's hit any limit on any of this stuff yet.
You're good to go. You're on a good track. Okay, this last question so far,
all right,
unless there are any others come in, is from Evans Russ 7.
Okay.
And this is kind of a very broad question, but I'm curious to see your answer for it. It says, hi, my name is Evans. I'm a beginner. I would like to know, what are blues? Thank you.
Oh, man. That's a great question because I was actually thinking about that. Like yesterday when I was coming, I was like, I should probably have something to say about what actually makes the blues the blues. And I think we've hit sort of on a couple things. I mean, so when you get down to sort of like the more traditional blues, we're thinking about, well, it's usually a simple chord progression that's based on the 1, the 4, and the 5. Not always, but that's a really good starting place. And what I mean by that is, let's switch to make it a little bit easier so we got some open strings. So I'm going to be thinking in E, because that's like the classic guitar blues key. So I have now, let's take my major scale, my E major scale, and I have 7 notes, and then I repeat again, the 8th one is the octave, which means it's the same note, just higher. So when you get to the the E's at the next one up, we call that the E 1 octave up from where we were. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? There we go. There's 1 octave of the E major scale. Well, we only want 3 chords from that. So we're thinking the 1, which would be the E. We want the 4, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, which is an A chord, and then the 5, which is B. So we got 1, 4, 5, 1. And the way that it works is usually it's a 12-bar form, and we're going to be 4 bars on the 1. So I'm going to do a classic sort of shuffle pattern in E. So here's the 1 chord. There's 1 bar. 3. Walk up to the 4. Back down to the 1. Up to the 5. Down to the 4. Turn around. 1, and then we start all over again. So that's a 12-bar form. So basically the way that that's broken down is 4 bars on the 1, which is the E, 2 bars on A, that's the 4, 2 bars back on the 1, so we're back to E, and then when we kind of get to the last 4 bars, we have the 5 for 1 bar, the 4 for 1 bar, and then we do this little turnaround, E, back up to B for the last bar. Yeah, and oftentimes you'll hear these little licks like, yeah, which is another sort of classic, like blues kind of vocabulary. It's like a move, right, that you always hear in blues music.
For sure.
So that's kind of like, if you're talking the most sort of like traditional way of looking at the blues, you could be kind of thinking is like, it's a 12-bar blues. There's certain chord progressions that you hear. You're going to hear the blues scale over top of that. But if we kind of move out of, well, what makes something bluesy, oftentimes it is pentatonic based, and it's the inflection. It's the way that you use that scale. Because you can play the pentatonic scale and not sound like a blues blues player at all. Like I could take, say, an E pentatonic and right?
That does very progressive of you.
Yeah, and I don't sound like that's the thing, right? That's like what kind of got me thinking about all these things when I was like, a kid, because I was like, well, he sounds better than I do. like he must know, so like it's a secret or something, or a different scale, right? But no, that's like those are the exact same notes that I was playing before, but it sounds nothing like it, right? So
that's a really good example, man.
So really, what makes something, so it's like you have blues music, you have traditionally like what is like a traditional blues progression and stuff, and it's like we can break that down. But what makes something bluesy is the way that you're actually using the scale. You're using the pentatonic scale. And it has to do with like the way that we bend those, the inflections. There's certain sort of vocabulary and stuff that makes something bluesy. I don't know if I can articulate it 100%, right? Some of it is like you just know when something sounds bluesy, right? Like you listen to...
I think a lot of, like the whole first part of the lesson, it was like, it's basically changing inflections to make things sound bluesy.
Exactly, yeah. Right? There are bluesy inflections and there are sort of like blues cliches and stuff that, that it's a way of using the pentatonic scale in a way that, we've all decided that's what blues sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would recommend you do is go check out Rhythm Blues Guitar 1 and Lead Blues Guitar 1, those 2 series here on the site. And then once you've gone through those things, come back here and watch this lesson again in the archives. And because this is going to give you a lot of
This is probably
context.
not a bad idea, because I mean, we covered everything from some basic concepts, but also got a little in-depth too. So,
the rhythm goes through that on a very step-by-step. It's usually 12 bars.
Yeah.
And then you can learn the minor pentatonic and blues scale. And then Alex in this lesson is a really nice, concise way to start teaching you some inflections or the style for blues to make those scales and sound like the blues in the context of the 12-bar blues that he showed you here. Yeah. So that's what I would do as a starting point.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
thanks for coming out, man.
No problem.
I think that'll do it.
That's...
Make sure one more time. I don't think there are any other questions left. Okay, great. Let's see. We have one more track that you're going to play us out on.
Yeah, you bet.
Tell us what it is and where it came from?
Yeah, awesome. So I play and write with a band called Best Night Ever, and we're releasing a new EP coming up in the next couple months. So this is one of the tracks is actually, again, sort of showing how we can take sort of something that's more of it's almost like a pop reggae song. But I've removed the original guitar solo, which is very kind of like high gain, but really kind of blues rock thing. So I'm just showing how you can get really bluesy on something like this too. Another style of popular music that the blues works really well on.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out, Alex. I appreciate it.
You bet, yeah. So I'll play through the solo, and then I'm going to rip some stuff over kind of in between. A game which is actually a really big blues thing is call and response.
Yeah,
So Pat's going to be singing at the end, and I'm going to be filling in between.
Okay, great.
Responding to what he's doing vocally.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, wicked.
Guys, thanks for coming out. If you have any questions, you can just email me or just drop a post in the forum, and I'll get back to you there. See you next week.
All right, let's do it.
Get some tunage.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Get some high gain sound going on, and
okay,
we'll do it.
Easy